Good evening, yes. Good evening, everyone. So in the previous session, I covered test plan document and HTTP response methods, right? Response codes, right? Now in today's session, let's understand the HTTP request response cycle and HTTP request methods. Okay. So HTTP request response cycle means suppose you access any web application and you type the URL in the browser, right? Apple.com or Amazon.in or any of this, right? So what happens from the moment you send the request till you receive the response, right? So I already gave a context yesterday. So what is meant by request response cycle? So what happens from the moment we send the request from a browser till we receive the response from the server to the browser, right? So let's understand it. So there are 5 stages over here, right? So these are the 5 stages. Let me go to the presentation, the slideshow mode. The first one is called local processing. Local processing means browser splits the URL breaks into some different components. Okay. So browser extracts the protocol, server name, optional port number, resource path, and query strings. So the moment you type the URL in the browser, right, it will extract the URL and or it will break that URL into different parts like this, right? It gets what is the protocol, what is the server name, what is the port number, resource path, and query strings. For example, if you type irctc.co.in, right? So if you type irctc.co.in, right? So there will be a redirection happening here and it will take you to this URL irctc.co.in and get a train search, isn't it? Now, so if you observe this, right? So if you observe this, so this is the protocol, right? The first part is the protocol. And then this is the server name, isn't it? So this is the server name. I gave color coding here, guys. Observe here. Protocol I gave in brown color and server name I gave it in red color. And port number is not there here, of course. That's why I mentioned optional port number. Okay, in this example, in this particular example. And then what is resource path? This is the resource path, right? You see that both of them in violet color, isn't it? So this is called as resource path. Okay. And query string is not there in any of these examples. I'll explain that later, what is meant by a query string. So when you have a query string, right, you will have a question mark followed by key value pairs. I'll show that those examples. Okay. I'll show I'll explain what is meant by query string and where does it come into picture and all later on. So for now, understand that the first step once we enter a URL in a browser, right? The first step the browser does is it does some local processing. On its side, it does some processing and it extracts the protocol and server name and port number and resource path. Port number is optional, right? Now, so this is one example. The other example is I took some. So if you take this example, right? So this simply contains protocol and server name. That's it. In the same way, if you type apple.com, right? So this also contains just protocol and server name, right? Now, so let me give this example. Let me explain this example. Okay. I'm going to take one sample application. I'll share it with everyone. And this is the server of that sample application called Web2s. I started that Web2 server and let me access the URL. Let me show the URL over here. So this is the URL of the application, what I have started just now. It's a travel application where we can book flight tickets. Yes. Okay. And if you observe here, this contains server name. See, this is localhost means my local machine. This application is running on my local machine. I have set up it on my laptop case. Understood, guys? So localhost means that is the default name of your machine. Understood or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? And this is port number. This part is, let me show you something. This is HTTPS actually. This is a HTTPS URL. And this is server name. Localhost is the machine name on which this application is running. And this is the port number on which this application is running. Now let's understand what is meant by port number. Port number means, so once you, the moment you start this server, right, this sample application server, right, the application will be running on this port number. Application will be listening on this port 1080 for any incoming request, right? It will continuously keep on listening on this port number for any incoming request. Means if some user is trying to access the application, right, it will be listening on that port number, right? And as soon as a user try to access the application, as soon as I type the URL, it has sent the response to me, right? And if you observe here, web2's index.htm, right? This is, what is this called as?
Resource paths.
Right, resource path. This is called as resource path. Now let's understand what is meant by resource path. Not only this one is, I have one more sample application on my machine, which I am starting it. Okay, this is an enterprise e-commerce Java application, enterprise Java e-commerce application. 1 second, I need to start MySQL for that. Okay, to make that work, let me check if it is running. If MySQL is running, okay, let me start this. Now you should see this application up and running. So please wait up for a moment. This is one of the sample applications that we will use for scripting. Okay, as I already explained, right? So I think I already explained it in the demo session. So I'll be using 4 to 5 demo applications and 1 or 2 real-time applications for in this training. Let me show you that scripting scenario sheet once. So I'll be covering like 4 to 5 sample applications and as well as 1 or 2 real-time applications like this. I'll be covering one script on Udemy application, one more script on Amazon applications. Okay, these two are real-time applications. Other applications I have marked as demo applications. Observe here, right? The reason why I mentioned is like some, some trainers or some, institutes are mentioning that these are real-time applications. It seems no, these are not real-time applications. JPEG Store is not a real-time application. AOS is not a real-time application. It's just a demo application, guys. Okay, that's the reason I had to mention here that these are demo applications, and these, these two applications, everyone know this, Amazon and Udemy. Again, there are 2 more demo applications which are used for some complex scripting. Okay, the last 2 applications. So let me show you. This is also another demo application for this one. AdvantageOnlineShopping.com is another demo application. It's not a real-time application, guys. So I heard from many students that other trainers or some few other training institutes are mentioning that as these are mentioning these as real-time applications. It seems that's why I'm mentioning here. These are not real-time applications, but these are demo applications. Okay. Again, this is also a demo application only, which I have set it on my local machine. This application, this Konakat application is running on my laptop, guys. Understood? That's why you see, if you observe the URL, right, you see localhost. If you see that localhost, that means this is a application running on the local machine. Clear, guys? Able to differentiate this, and the same application is available as an online application also, and this is the URL. Let me show you that. See here, Konakat demo application. So if you copy the link, let me show you that. So this is an online application. You see the URL, right? Konakat.com. That is a URL. So this is an online application. Now I have set up this application on my local machine for for monitoring purpose, so that I'll have kind of access to the logs and all. I'll have a complete access to the application. I can execute some SQL queries and all this. For that purpose, I have set up the same application on my local machine. Is it clear or any confusion? Understood or no? So if you observe this URL, I just now mentioned that, someone answered that also, that this is called as resource path. Now let's understand what is meant by this resource path. Okay. Let's understand what is meant by this resource path. Not only with demo application, guys. So you should know what is meant by resource path, what is query string, what are key value pairs and all that, technical jargon, right? Now observe here, this is the resource path of this page. Which page? Index.htm page, right? So index.htm is a page, or and it is available in this folder called web tools. Let me show you that. So if we go to the web tools folder, right, there is some, again in that there is some folder called htdocs. Inside it there is a folder, again there is a subfolder called web tools, and observe here, this is index.htm page, right? Understood, guys? Now you understood what is meant by resource path now? Can you tell me now what is meant by resource path if you understood that? Observe here. So this index.htm page is there in this web tools folder. Means the path of this resource. See, all these are called as web page resources, HTML files, JavaScript, images. We already discussed that case. Okay. Where did we discuss that? Where did we discuss that case? You remember I explained it here, right? So I explained it here. Any web page will be made up of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript typically, right? These are the different components of a web page. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now observe here, all the resources are there in this folder. See here, HTML, JavaScript, right? Of course, this application doesn't have any CSS concept. Okay, but you see here, HTML and JavaScript you are seeing. Right?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is one resource, web page resource. Okay, this is one web page resource, means part of a web page. And that web page resource is there in this path. That's web, which path? In web tools folder. That's why this is called as, where is that?
Resource path.
That's why this is called as resource path. Okay. What is the resource here? Index.htm is the HTML page resource. It is there in this web tools folder. So it is telling, we are asking server to get this page for us. We are asking server to get the page index.htm, which is available in web tools folder. That's what we are, when we are typing this URL, right? That's what we are actually doing.
Sir, one doubt.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Please.
Right. Now let me go back to the slide. Okay. So and observe here, I have done color coding again. So protocol is HTTP, server name is localhost, and this is port number, optional port number. Web tools is the web tools index.htm is the resource path. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Now let me show one more example. Okay. Suppose if you take the same web application, see in images folder, there is one image. There are a couple of images over here. Now what I will do is, let me try to access this, this image. Okay. Suppose in the URL, if you type, web tools images / webtools.png, and so you are sending the request to a resource, which is an image resource, which is available in images folder under web tools folder. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Now what is the resource path here?
Web2.png.
Right.
PNG.
This is called as resource path, right? If you click enter, right, so you'll get only that web tools image, isn't it?
Yes.
It's or no, guys? Understood or not? Suppose if you type hp_logo.png, sorry, .png, right? So you get that HP logo. Where is that image? See here, somewhere over here, right? Now you understood what is meant by resource path, right, everyone?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Understood, sir.
Let me go back to that. Now, so once it breaks that URL into different parts, right, then it will resolve the IP address of the server. Okay. It resolves the IP address of the server. See, for example, if you type apple.com, okay, or else I will take the first example. I think this is the best one. Okay. I'll take this example. So once you type this URL in the browser, right, first it will extract what is the protocol, what is the server name, and what is the resource path, right? Then it will try to resolve the IP address of the server, right? See here, this is, this is server name. This is server name. We already discussed that. This is server name, right? then using that server name, it will try to get the IP address of the IRCTC server. Okay. Every server will have some IP address space. Okay. So if you want to see like, what is the IP address of IRCTC, or, let me open a command prompt and type, ping facebook.com. Okay, for example, if you type facebook.com, so this should be the IP address of Facebook.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So if you can use ping command and you can ping the domain name. Okay. Now, irctc.co.in. Okay. So this is the IP address. This should be the IP address of IRCTC website, right? So it will. So your browser will try to resolve the IP address. Okay. It will not use ping command, by the way. To just show you that every server has an IP address. I have shown this example. It won't open a command prompt and it won't use ping command. It will resolve the IP address. Your browser will resolve the IP address of the server. It should get the IP address of the server, right? So for resolving that IP address, first it will look whether, first it will look in the browser cache first to check, and it will check whether if there are any recent requests to the same URL. If someone accesses the same URL, if someone accesses the same URL, right, it will have the IP address with it, right? Otherwise, it will look into the operating system cache, right? First, it will look into its own cache of recently requested URLs, right? If it finds the IP address there, it will get that IP address. Otherwise, it will look into the operating system cache, If it finds there, then it gets the IP address, right? Otherwise, it will look into router cache. Router cache means your Wi-Fi router cache. And then if it is not there in router cache also, then it will look into DNS cache. Now, what is this? So this operating system cache, router cache, and all, right? Browser cache, I hope everyone knows what is meant by a browser cache. No? Yes or no? Let me quickly explain this. Okay. Suppose if you access any website, right? If you access any website like Amazon.in or Flipkart.in or Zeomart.com, right? First time you access the URL, right? Page will be loading bit slow. From next time onwards, the same page will be loaded very fast. Of course, I accessed this Geomart.com previously also. That's why it was loaded. I will do one thing. I will open a private browser because we already discussed here. Private browsers won't. What is the difference between a normal browser and private browser?
History will not be saved in private browser.
Right. Browsing history will not be saved when you use a private browser, right? So that's why I'm using this. Suppose you type geomart.com. Of course, it is faster because of my internet connection speed, right? So you might have observed this, right? First time you access any website, right? So it will be a bit slower. Yes or no? The next time if you access the same URL, right, it will be faster, right? Of course, if you are using a normal browser, not a private browser, mostly you'll be using a normal browser only, isn't it? You'll be using a normal browser only mostly. Yes or no, guys? Yes, able to understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Here, so it took some time to get the page, to load the page, isn't it? Right? Why I'm using a private browser is to see how much time it actually takes for the first time when we access the application, right? So it takes certain time. The next time when you open, if you are using a normal browser, right? The next time when you access, suppose you close the browser and next day or, next hour, suppose if you type the same URL, right? It will be loaded faster, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
So how is it possible is your browser, when you access any website, right, your browser stores these images and some JavaScript files and some of the resources, page resources in the browser cache. It will store these, see, you have a lot of high resolution images here, whether it is apple.com or amazon.in, right? You have a lot of images, isn't it? So it will store those, images in the browser, something called browser cache. The next time when you access, right, it will not go get it from the server. It will not get it from Amazon server, or this website will not go to apple.com server, and it won't get from there. It will load from the browser cache directly. Understood or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Understood.
sir.
Right? So that is what browser cache here means. First,
Okay,
it will to resolve the IP address, right? First, it will look into the browser cache. If it is not there, if it looks into the operating system cache. If it is not there, also, if it could not find there, also, it will look into the router cache. If it doesn't find there, also, then it will what? If it doesn't find what? If it doesn't find the IP address of that URL, whatever you are typing in the browser, right? Then it looks into the DNS cache. Now let's understand what is this DNS cache. DNS stands for domain name system. First of all, I'm just opening your notes. Okay. And what does this DNS server contains is, it just contains the domain name and IP address. That's it. So first, DNS stands for domain name system, a domain name server. Right? So DNS stands for domain name system, right? And what does it do? It translates the human readable domain names, for example, Amazon.com, to machine readable IP addresses. Clear, guys? What does this domain name system does? It contains the mappings like this: domain name, IP address, domain name, IP address, and so on. Right? So you can read the definition here, right? It translates human readable domain names, for example, Amazon.com, to machine readable IP addresses. For example, this is the let's say this is the IP address of Amazon.com. Clear case? So it will look into the DNS cache. If it is found there, then it will get the IP address. Otherwise, if the cache lookup fails, then browser fires off a DNS request. Means browser sends a request to the DNS server, and DNS server responds with the IP address. Okay. Once the browser gets the IP address of that website or that you are trying to access, right, then it will establish a TCP IP connection. Once it gets the IP address, it will establish a TCP IP connection, and that is called as TCP handshake. Right? Once client has, I gave the description here. Once client has an IP address, browser must open a TCP connection over which it has to send a HTTP request. And this HTTP request can be a GET request, POST request, or PUT or delete request, whatever it can be. Right? We will discuss that in the next couple of minutes. So once it first what does it do? Browser does, it will break the URL into, it will extract the protocol server name, port number, resource path, and then it will try to, once it gets the server name, right, it will try to resolve the IP address of the server. Once it gets the IP address, it will establish, once a client has an IP address, means once browser got the IP address, right, it will open a TCP connection over which it has to send a HTTP request, right? And now that request can be a GET request or POST or PUT or delete or patch. There are many types of HTTP requests. We'll discuss that soon. Okay. And then browser receives the response. Once it sends the request, right? Browser sends the request, right? Server process that request and it will send the response, and browser receives the response and renders the page as response. So this is what happens when you send, from the moment you type in the URL till you receive the response from the server. And this is called as HTTP request response cycle. I'll take a pause here. Here we came across something called, once the browser has an IP address, right, it will send a HTTP request, isn't it? And I just now mentioned that the HTTP request, there are different types of HTTP request methods called GET, POST, PUT, delete, patch, etc. Now let's understand what are these request methods. What is GET, what is POST, what is PUT? All these are simple to understand. These are basics. Okay. So let me explain GET method first, right? So GET method. So HTTP request methods, the first one is GET method. So GET method is used to request data from a specified resource. So what is the purpose of get method? It is used to request data from a specified resource. Okay. Suppose you type in, oh, 1 second, let me type this. Suppose you are sending this URL. I'll take the same, simple example. Okay. So this will be easier to understand. That's why let me take this example. So when you type this, when you enter this URL in the browser, right, you are sending a GET request. And how can we check whether it is a GET request or a POST request? How can you check that? Yes, anyone?
By using developer tool.
Yes, can you speak it loud? Your voice is very feeble.
Developer tools, sir.
Perfect. Yes, so we can check that by using developer tools, isn't it? Let's see that. I clicked F12, Control Shift I. Yeah. Right. So I launch a developer tools. Now I'm sending this request again. Observe here. Right. And here is index.html. Observe here. Request method is a get method, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now let's understand what is this get method. What does that mean actually? What does that actually mean? So get method is used to request data from a specified resource. By using this URL, right, we are asking the server to get this page for us. As simple as that. We are asking server to simply get this page. That's it. And that page is there in the web tools folder. So this is called as resource path. And this is a get request. Clear case? What is a get request?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Right? As simple as that. There is no rocket science here. Right? And get is one of the most common HTTP methods. It is one of the most common HTTP methods. Okay. I will explain this, query string and name value pairs later on. Okay. For now, understand what is meant by get request, what is post request, and when get request will be used and when post request will be used. Right. And these are the features of get method. Very important interview question, guys. For beginners as well as like for experienced guys also, this is one of the important interview question. What is the difference between a get method and a post method? Get method and post method. You understood already what is get method? Yes or no? What is get method?
We want to search for to
Get
get
method
information
is
from the
used
server.
We want to
right.
get a response.
Get method is used to request data from a specified resource. So here in this example, get method is used to get this particular page, index.html page. We are sending a get request. We are setting a request, to get this page index.html. That's it. And it is a get request. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
And this is how you can check what type of request it is. Right? Now, you can also see the response codes which we discussed yesterday. Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Now, the next one, and let's discuss the features of GET request. GET request can be cached, means they can be stored in the browser cache, or they remain in the browser history. GET requests remain in the browser history, right? GET request can be bookmarked, right? Let me explain what is that bookmarked means. Observe here. So I already bookmarked this request. So observe here, that's why you see it in blue color, in a different color, isn't it? Suppose you see here, this, I did not bookmark this. So whatever requests are bookmarked, right, you will see this blue color in Chrome browser. Understood, guys? Bookmarked means next time when I want to access this page, right, I need not type the URL. Suppose I close this browser. Next time I want to, what is the purpose of bookmarking? I'm explaining that. So next
Automatically
time right. Next time, if I want to access the same page, right, you can go to bookmarks, right? You can go to bookmarks like this, and you can search for that URL. Where exactly is that? Of course, I have a lot of bookmarks. That's why, it's a bit difficult to locate it. See here. So under bookmarks, you can see that over here, right? You can, instead of typing the URL, right, you can simply select this bookmark, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's what it means. GET request can be bookmarked. Clear? And GET request should never be used when dealing with sensitive data like credentials. Guys, please remember, I will give you an assignment, an online assessment this weekend. Okay. So those, everyone should attempt that assessment and everyone should get through that assessment. Okay. To join load runner or JMeter. Fine. So that assessment will contain 15 multiple choice questions to be answered in 15 minutes. All are multiple choice questions. Okay. And you should clear that test case. So, and that test will be on whatever concepts are covered till now. The test will be on those concepts only. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So, GET request should never be used when dealing with sensitive data like credentials. Okay, means it should. Okay, you will understand this line, this statement once we go to the post request, right? You will understand this statement. I'll explain that. You better understand over there. Now, the next characteristic is GET request have length restrictions. Means there is certain length restriction, so it can't be more than 2048 characters. GET request cannot be more than 2048 characters. Okay. Characters means nothing but see how many characters are there here. If you want to check that, there is one online tool called character count online, right? So if you type in over here, right, if you type the URL over here, right, it will show you how many characters are there. How many are there?
40.
How many characters means how many letters are there, including this dot and slash and all. There are, you can see here
40.
the bottom that there are 40 characters, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Right? So this GET request length can't be more than 2048 characters. Okay, it has some length restriction, and the restriction is the max limit is 2048 characters. And GET request is only used to request data. You can only request data but not modify. You cannot modify the data using GET request. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? Easy to understand, right?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So shall we move to the next one? Next
Okay.
request method is post method, right? So now let's see what is this post method is. So post method is used to send data to a server. Post method is used to send data to a server. And what kind of data? Mostly like it is to create or update a resource, example, login or submit a HTML form and all. If you are submitting a HTML form or if you are logging into the application, the request method will be a post method. Now let me show you one example here, okay? So we accessed this URL previously and we saw that what type of request it is. This URL is a users get method, isn't it? Now I am logging into the application, for example. I'm logging into the application and observe here what type of request it is. What type of request it is?
Post.
Post method.
Post.
Okay? Post method will be used when we send data to a server. What data we have sent to the server now?
Login data.
Login password.
We have sent our username and password, isn't it? Right. So whenever we send some confidential data, right, or submit some confidential data to the server, right, a post method will be used. Now you understood this statement?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Data. So GET request should never be used when dealing with sensitive data like credentials, etc. Okay.
Username, password. Okay,
Right?
sir.
Because if you use GET request, right, for login, right, your username and password will be displayed in the URL. If the developer uses GET method for login, right, that your username and password will be visible in the URL. Okay, which is not desirable, right?
Yes, sir.
Which is not expected, isn't it? Understood, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Not only when you log in. Okay, I'll show you one more scenario where we use this, post request. Suppose if you click on sign up now, what is this form?
Sign up
Customer
form.
profile.
Huh?
Customer profile.
Customer profile.
This is a user registration form. Suppose if you want to create a username and password for this application, so you can use this form. Okay.
Oh,
Now let
okay,
me
sir.
register some user. Okay. So I will say that as April 2022 user 1. I'll give the username as April 22 user. Okay. Or else let me give web tools. Web tools user 1. Okay. And password I will give as password 1. First name and last name I will give the same thing as username. Right? My address and my city. Okay. Or else you can give, right? Basically, as this is a demo application, it won't validate anything. Whatever you give, it will accept. Okay. And now I am clicking on continue button. So observe here, what I am doing here is
You are registering into the site.
right. I am registering and create an account. I am registering with this username to create an account for myself. If I click on continue, right, observe here, it displays a confirmation message. Thank you, WebTools, for registering and welcome to the WebTools family. So this is a confirmation that user is registered. Now let me show that user ID over here in WebTools application. Okay. So see here in C, if you go to CGI bin users folder, you will see that user ID, registered. See here, WebTools user 1. Clear, guys? And see the date, observe the date and time, 13/4/1946, right? So this user is registered now. So when you are submitting, doing this user registration kind of scenarios also, right? It will be a post request. Now let me show you that. Okay. WebTools user. You understood, right? What is the purpose of this page? This page is used for registering a user. Yes or no? Understood?
Yes, sir.
Now let me do that again. I want to show you that this is a post request now. Okay. I'm giving some other username because I can't use WebTools user 1. I can't register again. Yes or no?
Yes, sir. You can't register.
I have already registered WebTools user 1. I cannot use the same thing, right? That's why I changed the number. Now observe here, I'm launching developer tools now, and I'm clicking on continue. Now let's see what is this request method. See, now the registration is successful. Here you can see it displays a confirmation message, and you can see that user ID here in users folder. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now let's see what type of request is this. What type of request is this, guys?
Post.
It is a post request, right? So that's what I mentioned here. What did I mention here in the post request? Observe here. Post request is used to send data to a server. For example, login or submit a HTML form also. Whenever we do registration, whenever we submit a HTML form, HTML page, right? Whenever we submit a HTML page, that will go as a post request. It would be a post request. Clear, guys? And post request is used to send data to a server to create or update a resource. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
And let's understand this statement. The data sent to the server with post is stored in the request body of the HTTP request. The data sent to the server. What data we have sent just now for user registration? We sent username, password,
Username, password,
address, and all this, right? And here it is mentioned that it will be stored in the request body of the HTTP request. Let me show you that. See, observe here. So that will be, in browser, right? In developer tools, it will be under payload. So see here, what is this? What are these details, guys? This is the data that I submitted while registration, doing user registration, right?
Yes, sir. So,
Right? And observe here, form data that is under the head of form data, right? So form data, why it is called as form data is we submitted some data in the HTML form, FORM form. So what data we submitted? This is the data that we submitted: username, password confirm, and all this, first name, last name, and all this, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Right? Remember here in Chrome, you will see that under payload tab. Okay, and one more thing, when you are using developer tools, you have to use network tab. There are multiple tabs. Observe here: elements, console, and see the elements will be used mostly by developers. Elements and console. Okay. As a test engineer, we will be mostly using this network tab. Either this network tab or there is one more tab called Lighthouse. I'll discuss that. I'll explain that what is this Lighthouse used for. But for now, remember that we will be mostly using network tab. Any software, most of the software test engineers will be using network tab. Please remember this. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Right. Now, so let's understand the post request characters, okay, characteristics. Post requests are never cached. They will not be stored in the browser cache. And post requests do not remain in the browser history. Post request cannot be bookmarked. We cannot bookmark that post request also, right? And post requests have no restriction on the data length, right? We already discussed that get request has some length restriction. What is that length restriction?
2048.
2048.
Right, 2048 characters, right? But there is no restriction as such for post requests. So these are the important difference between get and post request.
Okay,
Clear
sir.
guys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So apart from this, there are few more requests called put and delete and patch. Put, delete and patch. Okay. Now let's understand that put, delete and patch. So put is used to send data to a server to create or update a resource. If you want to insert some data into the database, right, we use put method. Or if you want to, so yeah, see here, it is good practice to use, hold on. Difference between, okay, so yeah, let me explain a simple way. If you want to update some resource, update some data in the database, right, we use put method. If you want to delete some resource, some data from the database, we use delete method, right? See, delete is a request to delete a specified entity from the server. If you want to delete some entity, some value from the server, right, we use this delete method. And patch method will be used to update a particular field in the database. Patch method will be used to update a particular field. For example, if you are updating your password, then patch method will be used. Any application, if you are using Amazon or if you are using Flipkart or any other application, right? If you are updating your password, right, then it will be sent as a patch method. Developer will be using patch method over there to update the password and those kind of scenarios. Clear, guys?
Clear,
So
sir.
these are the different request methods. What are those? Get,
Get to first to put
Post, put,
delete.
delete, patch.
delete,
Patch.
patch. These are the important HTTP request methods. Apart from this, there are few more. However, these are the important request methods. Clear, guys?
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
We have 10 more minutes. I can complete this request structure and response structure. Shall we?
Sir,
Sure.
one doubt, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, in the post request, you have told like it is not having any data, I mean restriction on data length.
Right.
Sir, actually we are just clicking the submit button, login button. Sir, in get request we are having a URL type. So,
Right.
but how we can think like this is having data length? So where we can see the data length? So we are just giving the details and clicking on a link. So
Okay, you need not bother about that length. Actually, developers will, like if it is a post request, right? Obviously, there will not be any restriction on the length. So developer will take care of that. When they have to use get request, when they should use post request, developer will be taking care of that. Okay, you need not worry about that. So we just need to know what are the differences between a get and a post. And if you want to see the length of the data, yes, you can see it over here. Suppose, if you, okay, let me show you. If you click on view source, right? So this is if you take the string to here, and if you want to see the length, see here. This is the length of that request, post request.
180 characters.
180 characters. But you need not bother about that. Okay.
okay, sir.
But now let's move on to the request structure and response structure. Okay. With this, like most of the fundamentals will be completed. All right. So, and we will be good to go start scripting in 2 days. Okay. In the next 1 or 2 days, we'll be good to start scripting. Now let's understand another important interview question. Okay. Not only from interview point of view. So everyone should know, every software engineer should know, like whether it is a developer or a tester, right? They should know about this request structure, right? Those who are working on web applications, right? They should understand this, what is request structure, what is response structure. Okay, so request structure, see, we already know what is meant by HTTP request, right? This is one HTTP request, isn't it? We already discussed that these are called as HTTP requests, isn't it? This is one more HTTP request to Amazon.in, right? Now let's understand how the request structure will be, right? So and let's understand what is the response structure also will be. Okay. So in the next slide, I have HTTP response structure. Okay. So whether it is request structure or whether it is HTTP request or HTTP response, it consists of three parts. First one is in the request, HTTP request, the first part is request line. Request line means nothing but request method token. Method token means again, this get either it is a get or post or put or delete. And the request URL and HTTP protocol. Your request line will be something like this. When you are sending a request to the server, for example, you type google.co.in. Your request will go like this to the server. Get, where get is the request method, and then URL, right? And then protocol version, protocol and version. This is how your your request will go if you type google.co.in. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Suppose you type if you are accessing this application, sample application, right? So this is how your request will go to the server, right? And this is about request line, the first part of the request. The second part of the request is called request headers. Very important to understand what is meant by a request header. So headers are used to pass some additional information about the request. Okay. Headers are used to pass some additional information about the request. Now let's understand what is meant by additional information. What additional information are we sending about the request? Yes. So if you see here, these are the, so let me show you those headers also. Okay. Go to headers, right? So for this URL, particular URL, right? See, if you go to headers, right? And go to request headers, observe here. Under request headers, you see some information, see here. Accept encoding, gzip deflate, accept language. I'll explain some important headers that you can understand. Okay? Accept, first let's see this accept language, EN, US, EN, and so on. So what browser is saying that I can understand only US English. When we are sending this request, right? Browser is also sending some additional information to the server. What additional information is it sending? It is saying that I can understand only US English. Now server will send the response in that language only. That's what this accept language means. Understood or no?
Yes, sir.
Right. So in the same way, there are few more important headers that you need to understand. Okay. There are few more called user agent. Yeah, this is one more important request header. User agent. So user agent means nothing but, I already explained this in previous session. What is meant by user agent?
Browser.
User agent means, yes, user agent means nothing but your browser, right? And this is the string under which this browser falls. This Chrome browser falls under this user agent string. Mozilla 5.0, Apple WebKit, and Chrome 100, blah blah blah. Actually, this is the let me show you the Chrome version. So right, so this is Chrome that I am using here. If you want to see which browser it is, you can go to help and check this about Google Chrome. Right? See here, what is the Chrome version here? 100.0. Some 4896 some blah blah blah. Right? So that's what it is showing here, right? Of course, it is showing the major version. No, it is showing the full version. See here, 100.0.4896.88, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right. So user agent is nothing but your browser, whatever browser you are using. Clear, guys? And now this is understood, right? This is understood, right? Accept language. And how does the browser know that a user can understand US English? You remember when we install operating system, right? We will set this as the language code, ENUS or EN English, Indian English or something like that, right? So it will get it from the system and it will send that user can understand only this language.
How many languages it will, and
What is that?
how many languages it will
Okay,
read
that
from?
depends on the application. Okay, that depends on how the application was developed.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so it completely depends on the application actually. Okay, so here this supports only US English. Okay, so we don't have any other option. But if you see this corner card, right, like I think this supports many languages. Okay, let me And there is a particular technical term for this. Any application supporting, multiple languages, international languages, is called as I18N. Okay. The technical term for that is I18N. I18N is a short form for internationalization. Okay. Let me show you the internationalization. You see here, right? Internationalization. What is I18N? What is internationalization?
Internationalization.
Right? What is meant by internationalization? Any application supporting international languages, that is called as internationalization. And why it is called I18N is, if you observe here, if you copy this word and see the number of characters, let me show you here. Right? How many characters are there here in total?
20 characters.
20 characters. Right? So between I and N, there are 18 characters. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
It's a bit difficult to pronounce this one, right? Internationalization. In short, that is called as I18N, because between I and N, there are 18 characters, isn't it?
Yes,
Now you understood what is I18N? And what is I18N? It is the process of preparing software so that it can support local languages and cultural settings, isn't it? Means it supports, multiple local languages, or it supports international languages. That is what I18N means. Clear, guys?
Clear.
Okay. And the important request headers are, the first one is request method and request time, at what time the request is sent, and accept encoding. So another important header that you need to understand, guys. So simple one. So what browser is saying here is send the response in GG format to me. Okay. Actually, what happens is when you send a request like this, right? You are getting the response like this, right? You will not get the response like this. Actually, you will see you will get a compressed response. Means the response will be sent in a zip format and it will send to the browser. Once the browser gets the response, it will unzip that and it will show it in the display like this to us. Okay. And by mentioning ggp inflate deflate, what is it saying is, browser is saying that please send me the response in GG format only. I can process only the response which is sent in GG format. That's what browser is saying here. So that is the additional information about the request. Understood, guys? What is meant by this additional information about the request? What is meant by a request header, or what is the purpose of request headers? Understood or no?
Yes.
Any queries? Guys, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Right. The next part of the request, HTTP request, is request body. Okay. Request body tries to send additional information required by the server to process the current request properly. How you can see that request body is, let me show you that. Let me go to developer tools. Okay. I'll click on continue. Let me close all this first. Yeah. Let me open developer tools. And suppose I'm clicking on continue button. Okay. So let me see, some requests will not have request body. Let me see that. Okay. So if you see the payload, right? Yeah, see here, there is some request body here, page menus. This is the request body, right? This is the request body for this particular request. Okay. So request body, what request body tries to send additional information required by the server to process the current request properly, right? So what is the moral essence of the story, guys? HTTP request consists of 3 parts. What are those?
Request line,
Request line, request headers, and request body. So in the same way, your HTTP response also contains 3 parts. But what are those? Status line. The first one is status line, response headers, and response body. Right? So only thing is the first part changes. Here it is request line. In HTTP request, it is a request line, whereas in HTTP response, it is a status line. And you know what is the status line? What is the status line, guys? So when you send a request, right, observe here. If you go to the response, right, hold on. Let me close this. Yeah, suppose if you see this, right? Response. See, observe here. See, this is part of the status line, right? Yes or no? HTTP 1.1 200 okay.
Port number. Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
This is response code, not port number. This is response code, HTTP response code. What does 200 indicate?
Success code, sir.
Right. 200 response code indicates a success. What does that mean? Your server is able to process the request successfully. That's what it means.
Request. Sir.
Server received the request and it was able to process the request successfully. And when sending the response, it sent this response code of 200. Okay. And that's what you are seeing here, right? 200 okay. Isn't it? Next. Next thing is
404, sir.
Huh? What is it?
404.
404 not found. So if you are sending a request for some page which is not existing, then you get that 404 not found. If server is unable to
Client side mistake, sir.
right, it represents a client side error. That's what I mentioned, right? So if you send a wrong request, for example, instead of index.html, for example, you type wrong by mistake, you send a wrong URL, right? In that case, you'll get this not found, 404 not found. Okay. Here you can see. See here. See here, 404 not found. Because it is saying that I could not find this inex.html because that is not there in that server, isn't it? So see here. So if you send a request to an existing resource, it will get that, but it is nowhere it is there. That this particular page is nowhere. That's what it is saying. I could not find that page, whatever you are asking. Right? And it is actually a client side issue. Means we have sent a wrong request. That's why you know that all the response codes that start with number 4 indicates client side errors. Isn't it?
Yes,
and observe here response header. See here, we got some response headers. Observe here. Connection keep alive. Important response headers is observe here. Server Apache 2.2.21 means this is the server. This is the web server of this application. For this application, this is the web server Apache 2.2.21, right? And date means at what time we got this response. What is the date at which we got this response? 13th April, 14:36, 5:52 seconds GMT. What is GMT, guys?
Greenwich Mean Time.
Indian time.
Greenwich Mean Time. That is also called as UTC. Yes or no? GMT stands for Greenwich Mean Time, and that is also called as GMT. And what is our time zone? What is the difference between GMT and IST?
GMT plus
5.5
5:30 equal to IST.
5.5 hours, right? UTC plus 5:30. 5.5 hours is equal to IST, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Indian Standard Time is 5.5 hours ahead of GMT. Clear, guys? Now these are the response headers. Observe here. These are the response headers. At what time this response is sent, and server. What is the server, and all this. So these are server is sending some additional information about the response, right? What information? What additional information it is sending? It is saying what server is that? What is the web server, and all those. Right? I have listed some. Of course, this doesn't have and also response time. This is the response time and E tag. Right? So we'll discuss this. Like I listed out some important response headers here required for us is content type, date means the time at which the response is sent, last modified, and server name, and connection keep alive, and content length. Content length is nothing but response length, size of the response, right? So these are the important response headers. Again, headers are used to pass additional information about the response. Headers are used to pass additional information about the response to the client. Clear, guys? And apart from this, you will have response body of the response. Okay, let me show you that. Where can we check that response body? If you go to response, right, this is called as response body. If you go to response tab, this is the response body. What does that mean? So if you right click and view page source, right, you will see the same code here. See. HTML head, title, frame set, and all this, right? This is what you saw here, right? This is what you are seeing here, isn't it? Yes or no, guys?
Yes, sir.
This is what you are seeing here. Now compare now, here and here. So this is called as response body. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll stop it here, guys, for today. So what all we covered today? HTTP request methods, request response cycle, and what else? What else we covered? Yes, come on, guys. Huh?
Yes, sir. Request structure and response structure we covered, sir.
Right, I'll stop it here, guys. Okay, I'll update these names later on. I have around 20 participants today. Right, I'll update this later. Okay. Any queries, guys, before we close the session for today?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so tomorrow I will cover few basic definitions. So we are done till here. Hey, hold on. I think I have shown these already screenshots and all. I have shown this in the previous session, right?
Yes,
In the yesterday's session, I have shown this when I explained the response codes. Okay, now what all is pending is I have to explain why should we use a tool for performance testing. So here tomorrow I'll explain that why should we use the tool and how does load runner work or how does JMeter work, and few basic definitions. I will cover some basic definitions like transaction response time, hits per second, throughput, and all this in tomorrow's session. Okay. We'll discuss this loss of performance testing and all. We'll discuss that later. I want to cover some basic definitions and then I want to start scripting for you. Okay. This defect life cycle and defect severity and priority, we'll discuss that later. Not required at this moment. All right. So tomorrow I am going to explain like load testing architecture for load runner and JMeter and why do we need a tool for doing performance testing. Here, guys. So by tomorrow, all the performance testing basics will be completed, most probably. And I will be starting scripting from. I'll be starting scripting from Monday. Okay. So we'll see like if anything is pending, I will cover tomorrow and day after tomorrow, and then we'll start the tool from next week. All right, guys. So if you don't have any queries, I'll close the session for today.
Okay, sir.
Adnan, do you have Adnan? Or you disconnected? Okay, got disconnected. Let me pause recording, guys. Okay, thanks. Thanks for joining and good night.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Okay,
Thank you, sir. Good night, sir.
And by the way, like everyone like getting notifications, right? Once I upload the demo session to YouTube, my YouTube channel,
Yes,
you are
sir.
getting notifications, right? Notifications are on
Yes,
mobile.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
you will
sir.
get those notifications only if you turn on all notifications for my YouTube channel, isn't it?
Okay, sir.
If you are not getting those notifications, please check that. All right.
Okay, sir.
Okay then, guys. Good night.
Okay, sir.